Welcome to Austin Stories. If you don't like Karens, we don't either. You will fit right in. First up, we're going to be talking about a horrible narcissist Karen mother-in-law who goes homeless and then OP does what? We'll see. And then a Karen makes OP's train late in true Karen fashion. What is the fallout? Let's find out. Also, all these videos here are in podcast form, so if you want to listen that way, check out the Austin Stories podcast on your local provider, or I'll give you a link in the description. Now, I know it's not Christmas, but Karens wish that they could be married too, so let's dive right on in. My horrible mother-in-law is homeless, and my wife and I don't care. Posted by Tanning Tanner 11. This is going to be a crazy Karen story. Here it is. I'm a 25 male and married to a 26 female named Carol, and her mother, Danielle, who is 61, is a complete bag of garbage, and that's the nicest thing to say. During Carol's childhood, Danielle would always belittle Carol and manipulate her into the most BS stuff, mostly always claiming that her father abandoned them in Colorado to seek fame and fortune in California, and refusing to pay child support, where she would actually spend said child support on her own self, buying books and clothes and not supporting her daughter. Danielle also changed Carol's last name on Social Security to Danielle's last name when she was a little kid, which made it incredibly difficult for Carol to find a job as an adult because she was an illegal alien to the US government. That meant she had one last name on her birth certificate and a different last name on her Social Security card. Danielle also had a very crap job that didn't pay the best and had to get an apartment with Carol under Carol's name because Danielle had crappy credit and Carol had a 0 credit score because she was 18 at the time and didn't have her own bills to pay. Danielle kept getting on Carol's case about not having a job, but Carol said that she couldn't because of the name issue. They ended up getting evicted due to failure to pay rent because Danielle's job wasn't enough to pay for a luxury apartment and they had to move in with Grandma. Danielle later lost her job during COVID and has been unemployed ever since. There's way too many scenarios about how Danielle would take advantage of her own daughter, but I don't want to bore y'all with all these details. Anyway, on to the story. Back in late 2021, while me and Carol were engaged, she wanted to join the US Navy. She got her name changed to her father's last name on Social Security to match her birth certificate and even gave her recruiter child custody papers to prove her name. She enlisted, got through basic, completed her A schooling, and got her orders to serve on a ship. We got married in September 2022 before she was shipped to Virginia for her new orders. While Carol was serving and I spent time packing my belongings to move out to Virginia myself, I learned that Danielle was going to therapy to possibly move on, or so I imagined. I tried so dang hard to stay away from her during that time, but she was always bugging me, wondering why Carol wasn't talking to her during the day. I let her know on repeated occasions that she has no cell service on her ship, but to her, it was just one of those in one ear and right out the other things. I eventually made it to Virginia in December 2022 to be with Carol. We have been ignoring all of Danielle's calls for a while now. Fast forward to April. Carol gets a text from Danielle asking her to call her to talk. They talk on the phone for a while and Carol learns that her grandma is not doing well. I also get my brother's high school graduation invitation in the mail and I want to see him graduate in May, which means that Carol wants to see her grandma because she fears that she may not make it to the end of 2023. Danielle seemed to be super nice, and Carol and I both thought that she'd changed because of all the therapy she had been getting. So, last week, we fly back to Colorado, and Danielle loans us her car while we're there, and was being way too nice to us like a decent human. We see my brother walk across the stage, and Carol gets to see her grandma. While there, we learn that Grandma wants to move into a, quote, more safer place, end quote, with Carol's aunt because of her health. And Danielle has to move somewhere else because, in her eyes, everyone doesn't want to take me in because the family doesn't like me. We told her that if we weren't living in a 650 square foot one-bedroom apartment on the other side of the country, yeah, then we could help her. Again, she starts being even nicer to us while still in Colorado. I even warned Carol that her being nice could mean something bad in the future, given her past behavior. Carol agreed. A few days after we flew back to Virginia, which was 5 days ago, Carol gets a text from Danielle saying that she's going to have to live in her car because nobody will help her in. Carol asked her why she can't get a job and get her own apartment, and she said that, quote, "I can't get a job at my age, and it's been too long, and it's very expensive to live on your own, especially in Colorado." Carol told her that we unfortunately can't help her because 1, we live in a small apartment, and 2, we live 7 states away on the other side of the country. So now, here we are today. I'm at work, and I get a call from Carol saying that she needs to be with me. I ask if everything's okay because I can tell she's not. She said she would talk about it when she got there. 30 minutes later, she shows up and I go on my lunch break with her. She tells me that her mom literally asked for $1,000 to help her move from Colorado to Virginia so she could be with us. $1,000! We told her multiple times we couldn't help her because we don't have that kind of room. We let alone don't have $1,000 to just give away because we live paycheck to paycheck. I was so flabbergasted. And then Carol told me that her being super nice in recent times was way too good to be true, which is what I felt would happen. She either didn't get the therapy that she needed or she lied. I don't know what the case was about that because there is no proof. I wasn't around for this part, but Carol and Danielle argued over the phone, more like cussing each other out per se. Danielle was upset with Carol for not providing a home for her when she did it for her first 20 years of life, and now Carol can't return the favor. Carol then told her mother just screw off already before hanging up and blocking her completely. Danielle is now homeless and living in her Nissan Sentra, but we couldn't care less. All those years Carol had to endure due to Danielle's entitled and narcissistic behavior is now biting her in the butt, and nobody wants to live with her because of this, because that witch only cares about herself and knows what she's doing is wrong and doesn't give a crap. I personally and honestly don't care if she dies. I will pee on her grave when she dies. Oh man, this one hits home to me because I've dealt with narcissism in my life before, and here's the thing. From the research I've done, please listen to this. This is so important, okay? You cannot change them as much as you want to, as much as you try, as the logic, the reasoning, and emotion that you have just does not convince them. They don't see reality in the same way that you or I do. It is a twisted, perverted version of it. And you are supposed to show no emotion because that is the fuel for the fire that they desire. And you showing that emotion feeds into them, positive or negative. So some people do have narcissist personality disorder and they are pretty far off the edge there. A lot of people have narcissist qualities, but they are not so far off the edge and they can be talked to. It depends on your individual situation as to where it is, but it's a freaking hard situation. I empathize with you, OP, because it is never easy. It is hard to cut off, but sometimes for your health, mental health, physical, for your family, you gotta do what you gotta do. And I sure as heck hope that this situation gets better for OP because man, it is a tough one to be in, I am sure. Have you ever had to deal with somebody like this? Let me know in the comments below. Karen made my train go behind schedule, posted by Flying Scotsman 6103. So this happened 2 years back. I thought of sharing it here. I was working as an engineer at a heritage museum, and at the end of the tour of the heritage museum, we had these rideable trains that kids and their parents could ride on to blow off the steam, pun absolutely intended, from the boringness of the tour. So I was given the job of driving these trains. Driving these trains was the best job in the museum, and I was fulfilling my lifelong dream of going on a steam train, blowing the whistle, listening to the kids all cheering and giggling with glee, and genuinely having a good time with my passion. So, as the engineer, you get to decide what train you want to drive for the day. I was going to drive the best steam train in the shed. It was a streamlined silver New York Hudson J3A Dreyfus. Oh man, it was a sight to see, and the whistle was loud and monstrous. Anywho, I decided to take it for a test drive before I took the passengers out for our 1-mile track with tunnels and hills and bends, trestle bridges, and crossing gates. I did the daily routine of oiling the axles, steaming the train, and cleaning the overall look to ensure that it was as shiny and silver as possible. I drove the train in the direction of our train yard. Okay, so let me set the scene. I was going to go through a railroad crossing, and before that, there was a parking lot on the left-hand side of the track, and while there was a whistle post on the other side. So this post, it was there to tell an engineer to blow the whistle before coming to a railroad crossing. I blew the whistle and immediately heard a car honk. I did not have time to turn around. The honk probably woke someone up, or a friendly person saw me coming and did a friendly honk. I went to pick up the cars and drove to the station. There was a crowd of kids and their parents looking at our manager's booth, and there was yelling. I did my usual thing of braking and using my bell instead of my whistle to tell my manager that I'd arrived on time. The manager and an angry woman came out. Let's call her EM, Entitled Mom. Entitled Mom points at me and shouts, "Him!" I got up from my train idling and say, "Me, ma'am? How dare you try to scare my kids and me while we're trying to take a nap?" This was probably the person who honked my car at me. "I'm sorry, ma'am, but I was following the sign's directions." "Well, look how traumatized my kids are." Her kids were fawning over the silver Dreyfus, taking pictures, not looking traumatized or scared. My manager says, "Ma'am, he was following directions, and please stop yelling. You're scaring the other kids. So, if you're going to ride, I am going to need to see your ticket." Some kids in line to ride my train's passenger car looked uncomfortable and antsy. They probably wanted the train ride to start. The parents were looking at the entitled mom because they didn't want to deal with their antsy kids. She huffed and said, "Fine, but my kids should ride in the front with the engineer." Entitled Mom gave the ticket to my manager, and my manager looked at the ticket. Ma'am, first of all, you needed to book the ticket online and choose the seats for your kids and you. The front near the engineer and the back near the caboose is our most popular options. This ticket is for the middle train cars. Secondly, this ticket is for tomorrow, so I cannot let you ride today. OP, start the train." Entitled Mom started to have another tirade with the manager, and I went over to the two kids of Entitled Mom to tell them that I was starting the train. I felt bad for them having a psychotic mother like that, so I gave them a golden train keychain that I gave everyone at the end of a train ride. We were a few minutes behind schedule. "Thanks so much, Entitled Mom," so I yelled, "All aboard," blew the whistle, and left the station a little too quickly. I drove the train, and I was coming up on a railroad crossing and saw the Entitled Mom pulling up to the dropping gates of the crossing. I had a devilish thought in my head. I dropped the speed to 10 to 15 miles per hour. Karen was honking her car and screaming at me. I just looked at her and smiled, putting my hands up, and said, "Hey, I'm just following the rules." Oh, the thing about this so much is that she has this idea in her head of what this experience is supposed to be, and this idealized version in her perfect little Karenized world there, right? So when it does not go to plan, she gets angry, and it turns out her ticket's not even till tomorrow. So she is not going to say, "Okay, my bad, I'm sorry, we'll come back tomorrow." No, why? Because that would be admitting defeat. That would mean being humble, losing your pride, and saying, "I was wrong, you were right." And Karens do not do that, do they ever? And now OP had some malicious compliance style revenge here to just drop that hammer at the very end there in a cute and fun, awesome little way. Way to go, OP. Entitled Karen tries to steal my stuff for her crying kids because she can't parent them. Click the video on your screen. You don't want to miss this insanity of a Karen. If you like this one, you're going to love that one, and I will see you there.